All right, today we're back at the Prefab Skate Park, aka the Prefabulous. When I mean prefab, I mean all these ramps are pre-made. I mean, we have these skate parks pretty much all over the country. Anyways, today we're gonna be going over the Feeble grind. That's this grind right here. It's not a Smith grind, but a Feeble grind. And before we even start this video, even before we start on the rail, I do suggest learning how to stall this trick on an unwaxed curb or an unwaxed parking block. That'll just be a great way to learn and balance this trick before you get on the rail. The other thing I do want to mention is that we're going to be doing it on a square rail today. I highly suggest learning this on a circle rail. A round rail is just a lot easier to lock in and get out of the rail. We'll talk about that further. But today we have a square rail, and if that's all you got, no worries, we're still going to do it. So enough of me talking, let's get to the Feeble grind. I feel like the main thing that makes this trick so hard is that it's not like a leveled, balanced grind. And when I mean that, when you're learning how to board slide, like this is pretty obvious, you have to balance it this way. When you're learning 50-50, like they're all very straightforward lock-ins. When you start doing feeble grinds, crooked grinds, I mean, once you learn how to actually hold it and lock it, it's great. But learning that is a little hard. When you're locked into a 50-50, you're kind of just going left and right. Same with the board slide. Now when you have a feeble grind, you're kind of going left, right, back, forward. Like there's a lot of different things now because the pressure point in your foot is going to be a little bit different than having it evenly balanced. If you guys are learning feeble grinds right now, don't get this confused with the Smith grind. So right now we're going to be learning a backside feeble grind, and this is also confused with the frontside Smith grind. But I'm going to try to show you guys the difference best I can. As you can see, I'm goofy foot, and when I'm approaching a feeble, I'm going to be going backside like I am a board slide. And my lock-in is going to be a little bit more crooked like this. Like I mentioned before, I'm goofy foot. In a Smith grind, I would be approaching it frontside like this. So similar to a frontside 50-50, it's actually dipped down. So it does look like a feeble grind. Also, very heavy on the back foot. But when you're doing a Smith grind, especially you can kind of see on a square rail, you're going to be kind of standing up more straight. But with a feeble grind, you're going to be more on your toes and going to be leaning on the side that you initially started from. So if you actually don't have like a good curb or parking block to try it on, you can definitely still try stalling the rail. And this is just a way you can kind of get comfortable holding the grind trick or just kind of holding it before you actually go into it with speed. First way I kind of suggest actually going at it would just be kind of standing next to the rail. I think this might be the safest way to do it. And kind of just get familiar how close you need to be to the rail and alling in. It's really all about getting comfortable holding that feeble stall. The other way I would suggest trying this is approaching it kind of more straight on from like this. It's kind of more sketchy this way, but I feel like it'll be an easier way to get your back truck on it. So definitely try a few different ways and a few different angles because maybe you'll find the right angle that locks and grinds for you. The other thing I do suggest trying is if you're still having a hard time kind of locking and holding it, try balancing on the rail. So in this case, low-key a square rail is going to be a little bit easier to do this than a circle rail. But what I would suggest, stand up in a 50-50, try to walk into a feeble grind and just hold it and see how long you can just hold this and kind of get comfortable. Because with the feeble grind, it's kind of funny. You're kind of like squatty potty, you know what I mean? Like you're really like taking a poo, you know what I'm saying? This is your stance that you want to be in, kind of heavily squatted, knees bent. Most of my weight is all on my back foot. Okay, I'm tired. That's not ideal. I mean, if you have like a homie with you or something, maybe you can kind of get into the rail right here and hold somebody just to kind of feel what it feels like. But even then, when you put your board right here, you can really feel the arch of your foot and the concave right here. That's all your pressure point right here. And that's what you're gonna need for a feeble grind. I think it's actually harder to do a feeble grind if you're just trying to do the end of the rail. And the only reason why I think this is harder to do is because once you get into it, your board still wants to go that way and your body's going that way. So it seems that your board will just flop over. So if that's even happening, I would suggest just trying to do the grind from a little bit further back. Because when you actually get into the grind, you'll have a little bit more control coming out. And like I mentioned before, this trick is very heavy on the back foot. The back foot is ultimately going to hold you in the grind and push you out. Hopefully during the stalling time, you really learned how to get comfortable getting into the grind. Getting into this trick properly really makes a difference. So there are two things I do want to mention when you're approaching the rail. When you're approaching the rail more parallel, I think it's going to be easier to get your grind. When I mean that is that you're not going to be really fighting the Feeble so much when you lock in. It'll be a little bit easier just to kind of push it in front of you and go. But let's say you are having a hard time getting into your Feeble grind. I would then suggest to kind of approach the Feeble grind more at an angle. When you're approaching it more at an angle, it'll be a little bit easier to get that back truck contact onto the rail. But by doing this, your body weight is naturally going to want to go over the rail. So then holding the Feeble grind is going to be a little bit harder. With this trick, you're going to really depend on the back arch of your foot, because that's going to really kind of sit in this little pocket right here and hold your grind. So I'll show you kind of the two approaches getting onto the rail, more parallel and then more at an angle. All right, so first off, let's go more parallel. And now we're going to approach it more at an angle. So do you remember how earlier I mentioned it's easier to do this trick on a circle rail? The reason why is the hang up factor. So your kingpin right here kind of hits the rail pretty heavily on this trick, especially on a square rail. When you lock into it on a square rail, and if you do it incorrectly, it's gonna just kind of grab you and you're gonna fall. Well, so you really want to aim for that side of the truck. You kind of want to avoid hitting that kingpin. With the circle rail, it doesn't have a harsh angle like that for this to grab on, so it naturally just kind of makes the trick a little bit easier to grind. If you have inverted kingpins, that'll definitely help you out. We were just talking about kingpin, kind of brings me to the end of the rail, which is kind of the end of the trick. The kingpin can ultimately kind of mess you up at the end of the rail too. So like I mentioned, having that kingpin on a square rail, it's kind of harder to come off the end of the rail straight. And it's really because of that little lock-in position it kind of keeps you in. When you're grinding a round rail, it seems to be a little bit more forgiving when you come off the end of the rail, but on a square rail, it's kind of hard. So what I suggest first learning when you're doing a Feeble on a square rail is doing 180 out. It might kind of sound gnarly, might be a little bit not normal for you, but trust me, it'll be a lot easier because you won't be fighting your kingpin. The Feeble 180, you'll actually be kind of going against your kingpin, sort of say. So doing the 180 out will be a lot easier. So if you're having troubles doing Feebles off of square rails, try 180 out. All right, those are my Feeble tricks and tips. Hopefully that helped you guys get your Feeble grinds down, so get grinding.